So I am starting to diversify my YouTube output, and today is the first day I am making wrestling content. I wanted to talk a little bit about Sami Zayn and how the ways I think he is saving Smackdown these days. I have been a big wrestling fan various times in my life, was back during the Hulk Hogan era in the 80s, that golden age, and then during the Attitude Era, but I was really a lapsed fan for a long time. And Sami Zayn and the Bloodline in whatever it was, 2021 to 2023 about, is really what got me back into wrestling. And I think a lot of us recognize that Bloodline story with Sami and Jay and the Cody finishing his story also was really another kind of golden age for WWE. And a lot of great storylines were happening, and it was really, really compelling product. But I think a lot of us would agree that it's fallen off a little bit in the couple of years since then. Yeah, the CM Punk Drew McIntyre feud was great, but that was kind of the exception. The product has become less compelling at times, I'd say, especially on SmackDown. I do think the Raw show has still been pretty strong, but there's been a clear decline over the last year or two on the SmackDown side. And I really think that what Sami just recently did with Trick Williams leading up to WrestleMania, and then the new story that Sami has gotten into with Cody Rhodes, has been the best thing on SmackDown in a long time. And I just really wanted to explore some of that and talk about what I really, really like about what Sami Zayn is doing and the way I think he's really helping revive SmackDown after a weak period. And to me, a lot of this comes down to, I've talked before about how wrestling is a morality play, especially American wrestling. And there are so many ways in which we play with stories of good and evil, right and wrong, cheating and doing things the honest way, and get the crowd to cheer for particular people as baby faces or cheer against them as heels. And part of what I really love about the Sami Zayn rivalry that he had with Trick Williams was not only was a great example of a double turn where it started out with Sami being the baby face and Trick Williams being the heel and then them reversing roles, but it did a really interesting double turn, in my opinion, in which the sort of underlying objective morality of the story didn't really change, but a lot of the emotional factors on the outside changed to get us to want to cheer for Trick instead of for Sami. And if you think about it, really, like what happened was Trick Williams came up with a character that was clearly a heel character in a lot of ways, right? He played a lot of the typical heel things in terms of being really obnoxious and disrespectful to the other guys around him, and in terms of cheating and doing a few dirty things to help him eventually win the US Championship. While Sami, of course, has been like one of the ultimate good guys in wrestling for several years now, ever since he broke from the Bloodline. But part of the problem and issue and why WWE thought they had to change this around, and I think they're absolutely right in this booking decision, is that Trick Williams is just so charismatic, such a funny guy, that like he's someone that you want to cheer for as a heel. Even when he's being very heelish, he just does it in a funny way. And it's a really great example of the cult of personality, is that, you know, if you have a great personality, if you do stuff in a really smarmy, funny way, even if you're really technically being a heel, you can win people over and get them to like you. So WWE kind of played into that and gradually had Trick go from being this heel to being this babyface, even as he wasn't really stopping a lot of his heelish behavior and characteristics. He was still kind of being a heel behind the scenes, but just doing it in a way that we liked, that we wanted to cheer on. So what did they do? In addition to do that, they said, let's do the same thing with Sami. Let's really keep him in sort of an objective way, being a babyface, but start changing all these subjective emotional factors around it and getting you to want to boo him, even though he hasn't really changed his inner character of being a babyface. And it was pretty brilliant, especially with the whole gingerbread man thing. And oh my God, that was funny. The whole gingerbread man thing where Sami really got unnerved and unsettled by this gingerbread parody, ended up beating up the gingerbread man when no one was in the costume and that kind of stuff. And I mean, this is a perfect example. To me, it's a lot like, if you've seen the movie Don't Look Up, there's that scene where the Jennifer Lawrence character loses her shit on camera, and she's completely justified, she's completely right in getting angry at what she's angry about on TV, but people just laugh at her because of the delivery, because of the fact that she lost her emotional cool, and she became a meme on the internet. Meanwhile, the Leonardo DiCaprio character comes in and says basically the exact same thing that the Jennifer Lawrence character says, and because he says it in a more cool, suave way, he becomes like a sex symbol, he becomes a hero. And it's a great example that, like, the medium is the message, as Malcolm McLaren said a long time ago, is that it didn't really matter what the underlying content was because those two people had the same underlying content, but what the crowd respects, what the crowd wants, is people who are cool under pressure, who manage to say things in a cool, collected way and not lose their emotional shit in that way. So I think it's really similar with Sami, is that Sami was completely justified in how he dealt with Trick Williams. He was right that Trick Williams was being disrespectful to him, and Trick was gaslighting him with this whole gingerbread man funeral thing. And of course, part was very funny about it is other people like Nick Aldis and Rey Mysterio ended up playing along with the gaslighting of Sami. And we all kind of as an audience wanted to play along with it too while we like mourn this gingerbread man funeral and just watch Sami in this kind of Truman Show-like situation where everyone else is sort of in on the joke except for Sami, and Sami's just losing his shit about this. But then what happens, Sami comes in to break up the gingerbread man funeral. And it turns out this time, Lil Yachty is actually hiding in the gingerbread man costume in the casket, and he comes out and helps Trick Williams beat Sami up. And I mean, like, this is further proof that Trick Williams was just being a dick the whole time. That the entire funeral shtick was just really kind of a heelish move to make Sami unhappy, to get under his skin, and to get a chance to beat up Sami back. So really, it's funny that, like, in a way, Sami was vindicated. He was right. Trick was the heel the whole time, except that we all loved the show so much. We loved the gag. We loved being in on the joke with Lil Yachty and Trick Williams and the rest of them, that we're actually actively cheering for these heels who did this kind of really shitty gaslighting of Sami Zayn. And I think it's just funny and great. And I mean, I really like how Sami has continued the same type of thing into his rivalry with Cody Rhodes now. And just yesterday, spoiler if you haven't seen it yet, on Smackdown, Sami announced that he's going to be the guest referee for the upcoming Gunther versus Cody match for the World Championship. And I'm sure this is going to lead to an extended rivalry, maybe a three-way rivalry, maybe some triple threat matches, definitely some Sami versus Cody matches. I think they're just, you know, finding some ways to keep this Cody stuff interesting until CM Punk comes back, because they are going to, in my opinion, build up toward Cody and CM Punk for WrestleMania. And then they're also going to, on the other show, build up toward Seth versus Roman for the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 2. And I think those are two great main events. They're the absolute best thing they could do for WrestleMania next year. And it really, the time is ripe to do it. You need to do it before all these guys get too old. So I'm looking forward to the build-up of both of these rivalries, but I think it's also been really fun so far, the way Sami is doing this whole last real good guy shtick. And in fact, the new t-shirt he just unveiled yesterday is great. I plan myself to get one of those last real good guy t-shirts as soon as I can. And I feel like you always have this thing where the best heels are the ones that you have some sympathy for, that have some legitimacy to their cause. And that's an example of what Sami has become. He's behaving in this way that sort of pushes our emotional buttons and makes us think of him as a heel, but in a lot of ways isn't so different than his babyface character. In a lot of ways, he still really is justified, and that's part of what makes it a really dynamic and interesting story. So I think that Sami has done an awesome job of making SmackDown interesting again, and is the best thing going on that show right now. And I really continue to look forward to what direction his rivalry with Cody Rhodes goes. Thanks for listening.